Day theme is Recover Better, Stand Up for Human Rights. Now, while the campaign to end gender-based violence ends today, development practitioners believe that it should be an all-year-round initiative, given the alarming increase in cases of GBV. This year's Human Rights Day theme relates to the COVID-19 pandemic and focuses on the need to build back better by ensuring human rights are central to recovery efforts. My name is Candice Mokalele, and of course joining me in studio is a panel, an all-male panel that will help us take a look at today's topic, which is the right culture, men's involvement in ending GBV. The show is brought to you by Zimpaper's TV network with support from the Spotlight Initiative, the Swedish Embassy, UNFPA and Say What. Now, before we get into it, gentlemen, I will allow you to introduce yourselves to our audience. Let me start with you.
Well, my name is Leo Munyono, and I'm the Say What project coordinator for the Action for Choice project.
All right.
Good afternoon, Candice. My name is Octane Gambezo. I'm the coordinator for Mugota.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Candice. My name is Nigel Mzongom, and I'm here representing the students.
Thank you. All right. Now, it is, thank you for joining me, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Now, it is no secret that often men are accused of being the perpetrators of toxic masculinity, negative practices that are known to progress human rights violations, including gender-based violence. Now, this is an issue that we will be looking at, but before we get to that, do take a look. Today marks the end of the 16 Days of Activism campaign, which also falls on International Human Rights Day. This year's 16 Days of Activism campaign came in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, which continues to wreak havoc across the globe. COVID restrictions such as lockdowns have led to a spike in the number of cases of gender-based violence globally, and Zimbabwe has not been spared. So Human Rights Day is being commemorated at a time when cases of human rights violations have been rising. According to the United Nations, rights are inalienable. Everyone is entitled to these as a human being, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, language, political affiliation, national or social origin, property, birth, or any other status. This year's theme is Recover Better, Stand for Human Rights. This year's theme relates to the COVID-19 pandemic and focuses on the need to build back better by ensuring human rights are central to recovery efforts. Gender-based violence violates human rights. Zimbabwe has continued to grapple with the rise in cases of gender-based violence over the years. According to Musasa, which is a non-governmental organization in Zimbabwe working towards ending gender-based violence against women and girls, since January 2020, the country has recorded over 26,000 cases of GBV. Musasa reports that GBV cases doubled during the COVID-19 lockdown period, with sexual abuse being the most common form of abuse. Gender-based violence comes in various forms, which include physical, verbal, psychological, sexual, and socio-economic violence. In Zimbabwe, sexual violence is the main form of GBV, and in most cases, the perpetrators are men. In the face of such statistics, involving men remains critical to fighting gender-based violence. However, there are instances where men are also victims of GBV. Reporting of such cases, though, is low because of the patriarchal society that we live in. An advocate for sexual reproductive health rights among the youth, Say What, believes the right culture and men involvement can help end GBV. Through its Mugota men's movement, Say What has been actively engaging men in tertiary institutions to fight forms of gender-based violence such as sexual harassment. Historically, young men have been vilified as perpetrators of negative masculinity and harmful cultural practices that treat women and girls as second-class citizens. Mugota gives birth to a generation of young men who have intentionally made the choice to change the narrative. As Zimbabwe marks the end of 16 Days of Activism on International Human Rights Day, Say What believes male engagement is critical in this discourse. All right, so as we've taken note, sexual violence is at the top of what we would say is really the biggest factor when we consider GBV cases. Most of them are sexual violence. Now, Leo, before we get into all that, maybe perhaps start off by explaining to us what is Say What and what is your involvement in this fight against GBV?
Thank you so much, Candice. Say What actually is an abbreviation which stands for Students and Youth Working on Reproductive Health Action Team. The organization was formed in 2003, but the main crux of the matter was to create a platform where students and young people could openly discuss about sexual and reproductive health issues, and of course gender-based violence included, because it's also one of the major elements of sexual reproductive health. So over the years, Say What has been doing a number of programs in tertiary institutions, and not only in tertiary institutions but in other spaces, even in communities, making sure that young people are responsible beings who understand their sexual and reproductive health, and who also are proactive in protecting themselves against the negative effects of around sexual and reproductive health. So over the years as well, we have been doing a number of projects that are in line with fighting gender-based violence, and specifically we came up with an initiative where we created what we call the Mugota and the Web for Life networks. These are two wings. The Web for Life platform allows female students in the tertiary institutions that we work with to come together as female students and discuss issues of sexual and reproductive health issues affecting them. And also it allows the male students to also come together and discuss issues affecting them. And through these two movements, the Mugota and the Web for Life movements, we have been able to address gender-based violence issues, especially around students in tertiary institutions.
All right. Now, before I move to Octave, is that what you innocent. Before I move, Leo, why did we separate the two groups? Why did we decide that we were going to have Mugota and, why did we have them separate?
Well, sometimes in programming you realize that when you are programming and you are implementing projects, sometimes females don't feel free to open up issues that are important to them when they are mixed within a group with male students. So separating the two was meant to give more attention to the issues that are specific to these two sexes. And you will see that when young women meet together and interact together as young women, they open up and they even discuss issues that they would never discuss when they are together with the male counterparts.
Okay.
But of course, through our programs, we always make sure that when female students meet on their own and male students meet on their own, we always have a time when the two groups come together and share notes and say, guys, what is happening? Why are we doing this way? Why are we treating women like this? Why are we treating men like this? So they always have an opportunity through Say What, where they meet and now share notes and strategies on how best to counter issues like gender-based violence.
All right, thank
Yes.
you. Innocent, where does Mugota come into this whole fight on gender-based violence? What is the role that you think this group of young men have in this fight?
Okay, thank you so much. Mugota comes in to change the narrative. There's this stereotype that men are the main perpetrators of gender-based violence. Now we are trying to shape the different narrative, trying to change the mindset of young men, because every change in attitude, a change in character has to start with a different teaching, a different culture. That is when Mugota comes in, to teach men to be responsible, to actually teach men to come up with initiatives that are actually centered on making efforts and shouting with a loud voice, a collective voice in the fight against gender-based violence. Some of these activities or some of the things that we do under Mugota is one of interest, the One Guy campaign, where myself as a young man, I come in and say, I am that one guy who says no to gender-based violence, who speaks out when I see a woman being harassed, when I see a woman being abused. So Mugota comes in to really make the young men say something, speaking out, make an action. So Mugota is more of action-oriented. Yes.
All right, thank you. Nigel, now our topic today is focusing on the right culture, men's involvement in ending GBV. What does this theme say to you as a young university male student?
All right, thank you for the time, Candice. Okay, like from my own point of view, I think from this theme which you just asked me right now, from what I understand is by the fact and by due and the fact that we are saying that men's involvement in ending GBV, it simply means that already we have been stereotyped that we are the perpetrators. And indeed, we are the perpetrators because statistically it has been proven, and as it has always been said, that numbers don't lie. So right now, statistically, we have been proven that men are the main perpetrators into this GBV and sexual harassment. So one or the other, our involvement into ending this GBV is so much essential, and it's very relevant because we are the perpetrators indeed. In as much as we try and in as much as we all want to run away from the fact that we are being labeled as the perpetrators, but yes, we are the perpetrators. So one or the other, we have to be involved in that ending of the GBV.
All right, so I'll take it from that you do believe that you have to be, as men, have to be involved in this fight. Without you, it's a lost cause.
It will be so much useless for us not to be involved into it. So yes.
Now, do you agree with him, Innocent?
Yes. First, it has to start with acceptance. If we do not accept that we are the main perpetrators of gender-based violence, then we will live in a belief of denial. How can we then fight GBV? We first have to make the men accept the realities, then make efforts to ending that.
All right. Now, Leo, they both agree that male involvement is critical. It is something that needs to be done because, as they've said, numbers don't lie. Men are the #1 perpetrators of gender-based violence, whether it be sexual, whether it be physical, psychological, economic. Gender-based violence against women and young girls. So why is it so important that we have these perpetrators as part of this fight? What is the reasoning behind it?
Well, the reasoning behind involvement of young men actually goes back to our culture, which is our theme today, where we are saying we want to build a new culture where young men are actively involved in ending gender-based violence. If you look at our culture, you will see that there are a lot of elements which denote a patriarchal society, where young men have been socialized to be the dominant ones, or the what we call hyper-masculinity, where they have that tendency to be macho and to want to dominate in everything. So it's something that was cultivated from long back, and we are trying to redefine the norms. We are trying to redefine things and say, if we have a young man as someone who is not that macho, who is not wanting to be dominant in everything, but who also thinks of the female counterpart and say, in as much as I want to be dominant, females also need to be respected. Young women within our communities also deserve their respect and their values as human beings. So you will see that the reason why we are coming in and saying we need to redefine the young men of today is because we want to change the toxic masculinity issues that were cultivated through our culture. And for your own information, culture is dynamic, of course, but culture is our way of life. Culture is a culmination of the socialization processes that we undergo as we grow up. In our culture, you know that young men, even when we were playing as young boys, we were told that a man don't cry. Yes, you are a man, be strong, show that you are a man. And even our parents would, they would socialize us in such a way that a man has to be dominant. Yes. And they have to do things that show that they are men. But that did not do well for us because as we grew up, it grew up in our mind, and it's a matter of changing our mindset now to say, yes, in as much as we want dominance, but is it good? What results is it bringing to the table? Are we not abusing the females that we have in our community? Okay. Yes. So basically the involvement of young men is involvement of a critical population which determines the outcome. If we leave out young men in our fight against gender-based violence, we are not doing ourselves a favor, but we are empowering one sex and at the same time leaving the perpetrator or the ones who still hold that macho mentality unaddressed.
All right. Now we're talking about the right culture. Gentlemen, what is the right culture? What is this right culture you're trying to now reinstill? Nigel, what is this right culture?
Okay, from my own understanding as well, I think the right culture it refers to whereby we become all equal. And then we should always know our rights, and we should always know that what we're doing is right or it's wrong. And then most of the times, what I believe is some of the guys may be involved in these actions of gender-based violence, but then they will not be aware of what they will be doing. So at the end, they won't be even in a position of knowing that they are involved in some actions of gender-based violence. So basically, in the end, what needs to be done is to educate and to inform and to tell people what is gender-based violence and how does it occur and why does it happen, and then what's the way forward to end the gender-based violence. That's how we can instill the right culture amongst ourselves as the young men.
Okay, Innocent, what is this right culture? He's given what he thinks is the right culture, but also bearing in mind that, as Leo said, culture is something we've grown up with. It's something that's been socialized within us, and it's a normal thing. So when we're talking about the right culture, are we implying that the culture we grew up with is wrong? What are we saying?
Okay, the right culture implies that we have to create young men that are responsible. Young men that understand that, yes, society favors men. But how then are we translating those advantages, those favors that we have as young men, right? We need to actually make a positive impact out of those favors that society has granted upon the young man. So creating that culture of saying, yes, I am favored by society. Society says I'm supposed to be getting much of the benefits in society, and be it inheritance, be it what, be it probably masculinity. You know, we just have to create that mindset of saying, yes, I do not have to use whatever I have at my advantage or to disadvantage the young woman or to disadvantage the females.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Leo, apart from Mugota, apart from Web for Life, how else has Say What been involved, especially when you look at, this 16 days that we've had? What else has Say What been doing in efforts to aid this fight against ending gender-based violence?
Thank you so much, Candice. You will realize that we have been, all our interventions from the beginning have an element of addressing gender-based violence and of promoting equality amongst young men and young women. And you realize that in most of our programs, what we have done is gender mainstreaming. It's our main goal to say, in whatever we do, we want to make sure that we promote the participation, equal participation of both male and female students. And that has been our culture, which is seen even in the programs that we do. We make sure that there is equal participation of the two. The reason why we also even have those two movements, the Web for Life and the Mugota movements. And of course, we do have a number of programs that we do that are around gender-based violence and making sure that we fight against gender-based violence. Under one project, which is called the Action for Choice Project, for example, as Octane had said, we have the One Guy campaign, which is meant to make sure that young men take charge and are responsible. They take the lead in fighting against abuse of young women. And they are, through the One Guy campaign, doing campaigns to other young men to motivate them to say, guys, we are not men because we are abusive, but we are men because we respect the females that we have, or our female counterparts. We have also realized that through the changes that have happened through COVID-19, our interventions on gender-based violence have even taken a new shift to online programming. We have been reaching out to students through awareness campaigns on gender-based violence. We have been reaching out to students through resource centers where we talk about gender-based violence issues. We have what we call safe zones, where female students gather and discuss about sexual and reproductive health issues, especially issues related to their protection, things to do with gender-based violence. But due to COVID-19, we have not been able to physically reach out to students, but we have extended our work to even go online or virtually. And now, through what we call Positive Choices WhatsApp platforms, we have been able to do discussions on gender-based violence. Of course, during the 16 days of activism, our discussions have been heightened, but discussions on gender-based violence are spread across the year, because the fight against gender-based violence is an all-year-round activity. It's not a once-off activity. So we have what we call Positive WhatsApp Choice platforms, where we invite guests or experts in the area of gender who help young people to understand what is gender-based violence, what are the forms of gender-based violence, because we believe that once young people are informed, once they have information on what gender-based violence is, it's only when they can now start to say, now I'm desisting from doing this because it's a form of gender-based violence.
Okay.
Yes, we also do have an initiative where we have created a helpline where students can now call in with their issues to do with gender-based violence. You know, gender-based violence happens every day. It happens in many spaces. It happens within college environments, even outside college environments. So through our call center initiative, we have started what we can call teleprogramming or telehealth programming, where now young people can call in. I've been abused. I'm facing such a challenge. I need help. And then we help them through our call center experts, and then we refer them for services where they can be helped. We are trying to also adopt to the current situation where we might not be able to meet students physically and do our programs that are to do with gender-based violence. Of course, when colleges are open, we have activities like health fairs, where we gather students and we bring service providers, especially those that are in the area of gender-based violence. We bring them, then they talk to students, and they also even provide counseling to those that are suffering or those that are affected by gender-based violence issues. So basically, our work mainstreams gender-based violence, and we make sure that in whatever program we do, there's equal participation of male and female students.
Okay, Leo, how long has this helpline been active for?
It has been active since June this year.
Okay.
Yes, and I can be sharing the numbers. I'm also share them at the end.
Please. For
our Net 1 users or Net 1 subscribers, you can call for free. It's a toll-free line. You can get in touch with us on 080 144 14 080 144 14 for our Net 1 subscribers. If you are using the Econet lines, or if you're an Econet subscriber, you can get in touch with us on our number 080 80516 080 80516. Once you call, we can even share with you a number of interventions that we are doing online so that you can get help through information and, of course, through referral.
All right. Now, Innocent and Nigel, I want to know a bit more about this one-man campaign. Where have you been pushing this campaign? Was it only during the 16 days of activism? And what has the reception to this campaign been?
Okay, it's called the hashtag One Guy campaign.
One Guy campaign,
yes. And this campaign, we have been carrying it out in tertiary institutions as well as in communities. In communities, we've been doing this in Hopley in particular, you know, taking with an informed with studies that we have carried out in Hopley, we've seen that there are a lot of young men there that are actually getting married or that are involved in intimate partner relationships. Though they are not really students, but they're young men.
Okay.
But then they are being involved in perpetrating gender-based violence. So we needed to reach out to them and tell them and make them understand or inform them on the effects of gender-based violence. And those all as in tertiary institutions all around Zimbabwe, where would bring in, probably you would bring in a person of influence, Baba Harare or an artist would really speak out to them, you know, would attract the students, you know, and speak out and teach the young people on things to do with gender-based violence, how we can be involved as young men in speaking out against gender-based violence. You know, myself, Nigel, and other students out there to really make a loud voice, right, in teaching others and, you know, making an influence, a big difference in speaking out against gender-based violence. You know, for a person like me to really come out and say, I am that one guy who can say no to gender-based violence. I am that one person who really understands that gender-based violence has these effects. You know, because it's all about showing that young men are in this fight together. Because the one guy concept, it's all about, it carries a hidden message sort of to the female counterparts, to show them that yes, we are making these efforts. These are initiatives that we're carrying out under Mugota. Say, yes, we may say young men or the young people in institutions, communities are the main perpetrators of gender-based violence, but these are the efforts that we are making. A loud voice that we are shouting out in speaking out against gender-based violence. Yes. So basically, that's the One Guy campaign where we would bring in young men in large numbers and making a loud voice.
All right, Nigel, you've been part of this campaign, I believe.
Yes, sir.
What has the impact of being part of such a setup done for you personally?
Okay, like for me personally, I think it changed a lot of things, especially mentally and knowledge-wise as well. Because I grew up like with some knowledge of this stereotype thing, whereby it was built up of three elements, which are entitlement, socialization, and conditioning. In the entitlement part, we all knew that we as men were told that we are entitled to own the women, the young women. And on the socialization part, it comes in on the part whereby through the society, we were all told that these women belongs to us, and we as men are the ones who are supposed to be dominant in the society. And then the conditioning part, we were conditioned to believe that women are always under us, and then we've got the right to do whatsoever thing which we want to the women. But then through these campaigns, that's where I was educated, and some of the other students as well from our colleges were actually educated through this networking of Mugota, which is in Say What network. So yeah, it helped a lot.
All right, so we are going to take a short break. Of course, you are watching this special edition of Heartbeat. Now, today we commemorate International Human Rights Day, but of course with a special bias towards the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which end today. And our topic for the day, of course, the right culture, men's involvement in ending GBV. This broadcast is brought to you by Zim Papers Television Network in partnership with the Spotlight Initiative, Say What, the Swedish Embassy, UNFPA, all part of bringing this educative program to you. So please do stay tuned. We will be right back. So welcome back to the special edition of Heartbeat. We are commemorating International Human Rights Day. Now, the theme for this year is Recover Better, Stand Up for Human Rights. Our topic today, however, is a special skew towards the 16 days of ending gender-based violence, which end today. Today marks the final day. And of course, our topic is the right culture, men's involvement in ending GBV. This broadcast is brought to you by Zim Papers TV Network with support from the Spotlight Initiative, the Swedish Embassy, UNFPA, and Say What. Now, this year's 16 Days campaign came at a time when the world has been grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic, and the challenges that COVID has presented are unprecedented, but Zimbabwe has not been spared of these challenges as well. According to UN Women, due to lockdown measures introduced to curb COVID-19, reports showed an alarming increase in cases of GBV. It is actually said that these cases doubled during lockdown, according to UMSASA Director Precious Taru. Let's take a look.
We have seen a spike in gender-based violence cases. Why do we say so? Because we've been comparing our own internal data. If you look at the period between January to March, we recorded around 5,500 cases. Then we went into the second quarter, April to June. The numbers doubled. We recorded around 10,548, if I'm not mistaken, but I know it was over 10,000. Then between July to the third week of September, we are over 11,000. So if it's a graphical presentation, you can see that there's a line in terms of the increase in number of cases. The cases keep on increasing. I think in terms of the legislative environment, we are appealing to the committee that it pushes forward the minimum mandatory sentence on rape, because this has been one of the most prevalent forms of abuse that women and girls are going through. It's something that is worrying, because as much as there are deterrent sentences that are being given in court, those inconsistencies in terms of one judge gives you 10 years, the other one gives you 1 year, is disheartens women, because they then don't understand how it's classified that this rape was more brutal than the other. So it's something that we are appealing, Kuti, if they could look at a minimum mandatory sentence.
All right, now, before we actually get into COVID and the impact that it's had, as, we've seen Precious Taro explaining the increase in numbers. Leo, I feel you may have a bit more information on the cultural aspect of things that we're trying to define here. Maybe I could just let you go through that for a bit.
Well, thank you so much, Candice. I'm sure if we go back to our culture, we would want to make a few things very clear. That our culture is very rich, especially Zimbabweans. Our culture is very rich in that it has got practices, beliefs, and norms and values that we can still uphold today and that have benefits in our fight against gender-based violence. You will see that in most cases, culture has been blamed to say it's because of our culture, that's why we are doing this and so on. But you will realize that if we really invest in learning from our culture, we can actually be better positioned to fight gender-based violence successfully. Looking at our culture, if we look at the values that we have as Zimbabweans, you will see that we have that value of respecting each other. Respect is a value that is in our culture, and if our young men today learn to respect each other amongst themselves and also learn to respect women, then we will go a long way in fighting gender-based violence. So you will see that we, through our programs now, we have been trying to also emphasize on the issue of respect, even as young people interact on social media platforms. You will realize that there's a lot of cyberbullying that is going on through the internet, Facebook, and even on Twitter and on WhatsApp. And you actually see that if young men respect young women, we might have a less of such cases of cyberbullying where people throw words and degrade each other using social media. Let's also look at the value of communication. Our culture values communication, and you see that in our culture, if a young man wants to marry, they will have to go through a certain process. They would introduce their girlfriend to the families, and the introductions are known. It will be known that this guy is going out with this girl, and it was known by relatives and so on. And that culture of open communication would even help to protect the two when they start to fight. Right now we are having cases of intimate partner violence, even students fighting each other or fighting in their relationships, simply because maybe communication has broken down somewhere and certain procedures were not followed to really introduce their relationship to the elders. So you will see that if we go back to our basics and say communication is key. Once you get into a relationship, you are a young man, you need to make sure that you follow the procedures to introduce your girlfriend to those who are around you, who can protect you and who can also safeguard you from abusing that lady. And you also see that through our culture, we have a value. The values that we have also speak to responsibility. Our culture actually has some proverbs which say adenda mangwira anotokwinya. Itsumo inoratidza kuti munhu anofanirwa kuita zvinhu zvaanokwanisa. You can't impregnate a girl and then you deny
Take
responsibility. Yeah,
responsibility
you
for
don't
it.
want to take responsibility of your pregnancy simply because you are feeling like you want to continue as a young man who doesn't have responsibility. So our culture has been very clear that young men have to be responsible. Once you disclosed to elders that you now want to get married, they would ask you questions. Are you now able to take care of this girl? Are you now able to do 1, 2, 3 things? And there were some tests that they were given to see their readiness and preparedness for such stages in life. So as say what we are coming in to say now, culture is not bad, but there are elements in our culture that we need to promote. There are values that we need to even uphold. There are values that we need to harness and make sure that the young men of today, who is now technologically
savvy.
Yes, the technological young men should always have those values, such that we are not saying, because our culture, people will say our culture is bad. But of course, we are also saying there are some harmful cultural practices and some harmful beliefs that are within our culture that we might also need to deal, so that we come up with a new culture where the young men of today is safe and the young women of today are also safe. Yes, we are talking of issues to do with child marriages. Yeah, there are issues that are cited in our, of course, it might not be part of our culture, but it's something that we have grown to see that has not been condemned for long back. We are saying child marriages are not good. We need to get into marriages at the right age. And there are also practices that pledge the girl child. We are saying they are not good because they put the young women at a disadvantage. And we want a young man who values the young woman, a young man who knows that marriage should be done when one is beyond the age of being a child.
Okay. Now, Leo, when you talk of these cultural practices, and I must agree with you personally that, you know, our cultural dictates are not bad. Entirely. There are some elements that do need to be fixed. But do you not think that a lot of it also has a lot to do with misinterpretation of our cultures, which would stem from a breakdown in, you know, kudara we had anasekurunana tete, this is how you should operate as a woman, this is, you know, and it was their role to kind of make sure the culture keeps going. Now that has kind of broken down. We have been left in a position where we interpret it as we see fit. So, for example, while kudara kurora meant kuvaka ukama, right now kurora would now be said, so I'll do what I want with her. You know, that interpretation, does that not also affect the fight against ending GBV?
It's very true. Our culture has been subject to various interpretations and manipulations as well, because once one can interpret a certain, even a certain proverb their own way, it becomes very difficult. I would want to take you back to the proverb which says, you see, that proverb is very clear. But you still see that this proverb is very old. It's older than ourselves.
Leo, explain your proverb. You're dealing with young people.
Let them be birds. Eggs don't have, you can't make stew out of eggs. It simply implies that we have to allow the children to grow.
Yes.
Let them mature and get to a level where they can now make their own decisions to get into maybe marriage or any other decision that they can make. So you will see that our culture has principles that are there, but they are subject to various interpretations and manipulations. But of course, like you mentioned, that we used to have the aunts, the aunties, and the sekurus. The challenge that we now have is we have information accessible everywhere. Even on the internet, you Google anything, you get an answer, and you get several answers to one issue. That is also a problem, which means we have to do a great deal of censoring the work or the information that is available. And they say what we come in now as an organization to give the right information, the right advice to our young people, so that they don't get information which is half-baked and which is not reliable. We believe in giving young people information which is scientifically proven, information which is also helpful to improve their lives. And one of the information that we are giving them as young men is that they should be responsible. Yes, they should be responsible for their actions. If they choose to do something, then they should also be prepared to handle the consequences that come after.
All right, responsible young men. Are you in relationships?
Yeah. Yes.
Why are you hesitating? Why are you hesitating? Should we be worried?
No.
I'm not going to put you on the spot. I just want to find out what kind of conversations have you been having with your partners? not necessarily long term, but when we bear in mind the context of COVID, you may not be as accessible as you were before, or she's not as accessible as she was before, and that does tend to have a little bit of problem brewing underneath. What conversations are you having with your partners? Nigel, let me start with you.
Okay, you mean nowadays, or you mean back then in the days?
No, right now, in this context, in this space, how are you communicating?
Of course, right now we've now come to an extent whereby things have gotten to be modernized. So technology has been playing a big part.
But what are you saying to each other? You're not seeing each other as often as you were.
Yeah,
that's frustrating. What are you saying?
It's quite tricky. Why am I saying that? Is because things have changed, stories have changed, moments have changed. So we are now pushed to talk about these things, which I tend to say they are unrealistic. Like for instance, we might as well be forced to start to talk about the marriage issues and I want to marry you and this and that and that. But then we all know.
Why are you lying? Innocent, what conversations are you having with your partner?
Okay. Pardon me, I don't want to speak about my relationship, but what I would want to speak about is a modern culture that has been adopted, probably in programming, and in it's a culture that we are trying to address as Mugota. This culture of probably when you're giving statistics and numbers of cases, the spike in cases of GBV, we call these people victims, perpetrators, what's the other word? Survivors. Now, under Mugota, we try, what do we call victims? What do we call perpetrators? What do we call survivors? The victims are our sisters.
You're steering my conversation elsewhere. Just hold on.
Yes.
See, I was asking this for a reason. Now, you are in relationships where you are not with your partners.
Yeah, I chose not to answer.
That's fine. That's
yes.
okay. You're not. I won't ask you again. Yes. It's okay. But you're in these situations where you don't live with your partners, right?
Yes.
And imagine the frustration that you're feeling. But now there's also the reverse of that, where people live together, and they live together and they're constantly in each other's spaces and they're constantly seeing each other. And now we've got this spike. So what I wanted to then lead to and ask you, so now I'm bringing this to you, Innocent. Sure. You've refused to answer yours, it's fine. But I'm sure you've communicated with your peers who live with their partners. What are they saying about them being stuck in these households where they end up aggravated by their partners, or they're aggravating their partners? How are we getting to this increase in statistics?
It all comes back to probably communication, how they communicate amongst each other, how they understand the kind of relationship that they have, right? Let's say, for example, a case of gender-based violence has taken place. Now, what do they call the person who has been victimized? They have to understand that that person is a partner, a sister, a relative, right? So probably it all centers on that, in understanding the kind of relationship that they have with these people. Because if they view these people as distant, it leads to a spike in these cases, because they would say, it's a distant person, I don't even know them, Muskana, I say, Amayangu, these are some of the things that are really said in relationships. So it all comes back to saying, this person is someone who loves me.
Yes.
This person is someone else's sister, someone else's brother. So it all comes back to that, the kind of communication and how you view the next person.
All right, so Innocent's issue is communication. And I think Mugota has been trying to address this issue, hasn't it? This issue of how we communicate with each other as peers. For the young men, how you communicate with the young ladies, and how you take the communication they bring to you, don't you? All right, now let's just get a bit more information on how Mugota operates. Just take a look.
My name is Leo Munyono from Say What, Manicaland. I'm here today
under the Action for Choice project, where we have young men under the Mugota platform. They've been doing dialogues during this event, and they've been talking to young men of their age, talking about different issues of sexual and reproductive health. We are emphasizing that young men, male students, are partners and supporters for young women or female students to access sexual and reproductive health services. These dialogues are meant to promote positive choices amongst young men. We are especially saying young men should not be perpetrators of sexual harassment. Young men should not be perpetrators of gender-based violence within the college environment. So we are saying young men should be supporters for female students. Young men should help in creating a conducive environment where female students are comfortable and safe to access sexual and reproductive health services. The dialogues have been taking place in a very unique way. You see this combi behind me. The young men, can do dialogues here, and they are also doing the dialogues outside this combi. Each time they see this combi moving within the college environment, they see it as a symbol of young men's pride, and they take it as a symbol of advocacy for positive programs that promote female students' participation. And Manicaland State University of Applied Sciences is so proud to be part of this project, which so far has promoted positive participation from the male students, especially in as far as the access to HIV services is concerned, the promotion of gender-based violence-free environment is concerned, as well as the improved access to contraception.
All right, Leo. Unfortunately, we are almost at the end of our discussion today. But during the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, I know you guys have been out there, you've been interacting with different people. What are some of the gaps that you've discovered in these efforts to fight GBV? What are some of the places where we're falling short?
Well, I think one area that we are falling short is the understanding, the understanding of what GBV is, what makes up gender-based violence, and what are the forms. You will see that some people are doing, they are perpetrating gender-based violence unknowingly, or without really knowing that what they are doing is not good. So the knowledge and understanding of what gender-based violence is, and even the understanding of the consequences of the actions that we do daily, that we normalize and say, this is normal because we have been doing this as men and so on. That is a big drawback, and there is need for more effort, of course, to address the information gap in our communities and in amongst our young people. Another gap that we have also realized is the blame game. When you want to solve a problem and you always continuously point at each other, say these ones are the perpetrators, these ones are the perpetrators, like we saw during the discussion today, that young men at one point, men are labeled the perpetrators, and young men are also saying, no, women are the perpetrators, we are also being harassed. So once there is always that debate to say this one is the perpetrator, and we will not do much in addressing gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is an issue that we need to address collectively without really pointing at fingers, but it's possible from both ways. Men and women can both be perpetrators and, of course, survivors at any given point. So that gap of blame game is taking us long. Once you continuously blame each other, you take long to reach to the solution.
All right. Okay.
Yes.
Thank
and
you.
Of course, I would not emphasize the COVID-19 situation that we are in. We are having partners staying together in the same environment because of lockdown. And when you are staying within the same place for a longer time, chances are that gender-based violence happens because you are within the same environment. Now and again vanhu kumbosuwana also kuti uya hapo uya aripo, but that kujairirana kunonyanya kunogova kakonzera zvakare gender-based violence. So basically these are just the few gaps that we are also witnessing.
All right, now he's mentioned the blame game. He's mentioned not understanding what exactly gender-based violence is, and also not understanding the consequences of gender-based violence. Now, gentlemen, as we conclude in 1 minute or less, actually that 1 minute's a long time, 10 seconds or less, how do we plug some of these gaps? You can pick any of the gaps and you can just give us a solution to plug that. Innocent, I'll start with you.
Okay, the blame game. I think it all starts with how the female counterparts are viewing men's contribution in the fight against gender-based violence? How are they seeing it, my efforts? Is it because tikupinda isusu wacho as guys as well tikupinda say tichifighta gender-based violence tikupinda chiva blame here vasikana this vasikana vanozoda zvakati vanasikana vanozoda zvakati anditi the other thing is in capacity building. We can address those gaps by building the capacity of young men to really speak or when they are fighting gender-based violence, to really know how to tackle these things, how to actually engage the female counterparts. Right? So I think the things is to do with the relationship that we have with the female counterparts in fighting gender-based violence, and also building the capacity of young men to know how to engage the young men and the young women, and how to really speak in addressing these issues.
All right, thank you. Nigel?
Thank you. All right, from my perspective, I think, especially from the community of the tertiary institutions I usually spend most of my time at, I think first and foremost, people really need to be educated and to be well informed on what is gender-based violence, such that when they will be caught off guard, they will be in a position to know that they were involved in some actions of gender-based violence. And then secondly, for us to end this gender-based violence amongst the students, we really need to maximize the usage of this Mugota network, which has been brought to us by Say What. Because there's some instances whereby you are a guy, right? And then for you to be told, you see what I'm of course, you'll be always in a defensive mode in front of those girls. You won't be in a position of admitting that you are the perpetrators. But then if you are in the Mugota network, you can actually admit it, because you'll be amongst boys, and there won't be anything else to be ashamed of, or anything else to be scared of. So yeah, for us to end this blame game and this blame game thing, we need to educate people. And then for us to end the GBV among the students, we really need to maximize this Mugota network usage through the Say What platforms. So yeah, I think that's all what we can do for us to be in a better position.
All right. Thank you very much, Nigel. Thank you, Innocent, for joining us. Leo, as we come to the end of this program, I think it is important for us to remember that, yes, the 16 days have come to an end, but it's an all year round fight until there are 0 cases of GBV against men, women, girls, boys. We must continue to fight this fight every single day. I want you to just kind of wrap up for us and tell us Say What's position going forward in this fight against GBV, but also I want you to remind us of those helpline numbers at the end.
Thank you so much, Candice. It's very true that the fight against the gender-based violence continues. Actually, the 16 days of activism are just a phase where we accelerate efforts against gender-based violence, but it's 365 days in a year, January to December. So we are saying to young men and young women out there, we are saying to viewers all out there, that let's do our part in protecting ourselves against gender-based violence. Let's do our part in respecting each other in our homes, in our tertiary institutions, whichever space we are in. Let's respect each other as human beings, because out of respect will we go a long way in fighting gender-based violence. Let's be responsible beings. Let's seek help when we feel that we can't control our emotions, when we feel that we are about to do something that is regrettable. So as we conclude, like you said, we continuously encourage you to get in touch with us at our call center numbers. For Net 1 subscribers, you can get in touch with us on 080 14414, 080-14414. And of course, for Econet subscribers, you can get in touch with us on 080-80-516, 080-80-516. We will help you through your issues. If you are being abused or if you are a survivor of gender-based violence, feel free to talk to us. We have able and experienced young people who can also talk to you and help you to the next stage in life. Don't, of course, get to those extremes. Don't allow gender-based violence to destroy you. Don't be a perpetrator of gender-based violence. As we get into the festive season, just make sure that people around you are happy and you are not on the offensive.
Leo, this helpline, sorry, I know I said it was in conclusion, but this helpline is also open to someone who feels they are having this urge that they cannot control and they just need someone kumudzora.
This also, that's very true. Yes.
So even if you are just somebody who needs help controlling their temper or feels they're in a situation that could lead to a case of GBV, the helplines are open to you as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. Of course, we have been marking International Human Rights Day, also commemorating the final day of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. This broadcast was brought to you by Zimpapers TV Network in partnership with the Spotlight Initiative, the Swedish Embassy, UNFPA, and Say What. It has been a very, I hope, informative discussion, and that you leave here better and you know what your role is in the fight against GBV. My name is Candice. Be kind to each other, but be kinder still to yourselves. We'll see you next time.